Christian preacher exposes pagan Catholicism idolatry. This week I found a short video by someone on YouTube. I don't know whether he is a Protestant or something else, but he is going to repeat a very popular argument against Catholicism. I decided to use his clip as an example, since his delivery of the argument is probably as respectful as they come. I will let him do the talking.
Mary died after Jesus and was taken to heaven. Now she sits next to her son as the Queen of heaven and of earth. No, she's not. Let's take a look. Jeremiah chapter 7 verse 18 says, "The children gathered wood and their fathers kindled the fire. The women knead their dough to make cakes to the Queen of heaven and pour out drink offerings unto other gods, that they may provoke me to anger." In this passage, God is speaking about the Queen of heaven. He ain't talking about Mary. The Queen of heaven referred to in this passage is a false goddess who goes by the name Ashtar, Asherah, and many other names. Mary is not a false goddess. She's not even a deity at all. So to reduce Mary's position to one of a fake god, we have to be very careful about, even though we want to pay her reverence. Don't confuse the mother of Jesus with a false deity.
Catholics call Mary the Queen of Heaven, just like the pagans refer to Ishtar as the Queen of Heaven in Jeremiah chapter 44. Catholics are pagan idolaters who worship Ishtar. I, on the other hand, worship the King of Kings. And who is the King of Kings, you might ask? Artaxerxes is the King of Kings. Wait, what? That can't be right. This is a copy of the letter that King Artaxerxes gave to Ezra, and it says, "Artaxerxes, King of Kings, to Ezra the priest." Wait, so Artaxerxes is called King of Kings? "For thus says the Lord God, Behold, I will bring against Tyre from the north Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, King of Kings." Wait, what? So God himself called Nebuchadnezzar the King of Kings? And Daniel himself also referred to Nebuchadnezzar as the King of Kings? But Paul said God is the King of Kings, and John made clear that Jesus is the King of Kings. So this means that Jesus is the pagan king Nebuchadnezzar, or God is Artaxerxes, or Nebuchadnezzar is Artaxerxes, or Artaxerxes is Jesus, or people invented Yahweh, who is actually the pagan king Nebuchadnezzar. Oh well, since the logic of my argument against Catholicism can be used against the New Testament and Christianity, I guess Christianity is just paganism. Yeah, maybe don't use bad arguments when similar bad arguments can be made against you. By the way, I will make another video about 3 other Protestant arguments that, if taken seriously, would destroy the Bible, so stay tuned. That whole Queen of Heaven argument was one of the arguments I myself have used against Catholicism back when I was an anti-Catholic. I have seen people deliver that argument in much worse ways than the guy in that clip. Luckily, his attitude was more along the lines of, "Hey, be careful, don't do this," instead of the typical anti-Catholic rants of, "You pagan idolater, you are satanic and going to hell." So yeah, I guess props to the guy for not losing his mind. It is still the same bad argument, but at least his delivery didn't make my skin crawl. Getting back to the point of the King of Kings passages I pointed out, some pagan being called King of Kings does not mean that the same title cannot be applied to God, or that God is somehow a pagan copycat of a pagan king. Similarly, just because pagans called Ishtar the Queen of Heaven does not mean that the title is intrinsically evil and pagan, and that no one else can ever be called the Queen of Heaven again. In ancient kingdoms, it was not unusual for the king's mother to be the queen instead of his wife. After all, they often had multiple wives, but they only had one mother. For example, in Daniel chapter 5, the reference to the queen is understood to be in reference to the king's mother by numerous Bible scholars. And among the Jews, King Asa removed his mother from being queen mother because of her idolatry. And you see a similar reference in 2 Kings chapter 10 in reference to the king's mother being the queen, as well as in Jeremiah 13, where God told Jeremiah to address the king and the queen mother, with the passage portraying the king's mother as sharing in her son's rule. So if Jesus is the Davidic king and king of heaven, Mother Mary is the queen mother in the new Davidic kingdom. She will be the queen of heaven. And you can obviously connect that with the vision of the woman in Revelation 12, who has crowns on her head and is in heaven, with Christians interpreting this to be Mother Mary, obviously as well as the church, since visions can have multiple meanings. But even if you wanted to ignore Revelation 12, you still have to deal with the fact that the Davidic king's mother is the queen in the kingdom. And even if you want to get rid of all the arguments in favor of her being the queen of heaven, you definitely cannot condemn the belief as contradicting the Bible and it being guilty of paganism, unless you are willing to make other speculative, unhistorical, illogical, and bad arguments that destroy the Bible and make Christianity as a whole pagan. Yeah, please don't.